What's up, everybody? Welcome to the newest episode of the Debate Mates. I'm Matthew Schwanenberg, and I am joined today by the man, the myth, the legend, the founding member of the punk rock legendary band Squirt, and the biggest 76ers fan I know, Mr. Mercier. Pleasure to have you on the show.
And it is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for that intro, Mr. Schwanenberg. My internet connection is unstable for no apparent reason right now, so if I'm glitching out, I apologize.
I noticed, but it's fine. Oh, we'll get through it.
Yeah, we'll plow through it.
Just like the Brooklyn
my
Nets
5-minute
struggles,
speech
but we'll
about
get through it.
That's exactly right.
It's a perfect segue.
Pretend I'm Kyrie Irving today.
It's a metaphor for the basketball that we're going to talk about.
Exactly.
So it all works out.
It's exactly what it is.
So
that's
yeah,
right. That's right.
Like I kind of just gave away, we're going to be talking about the Brooklyn Nets a little bit on this show after the absolute bombshell trade that happened a week ago yesterday. James Harden to the Philadelphia 76ers. Ben Simmons coming to the Brooklyn Nets. Some other pieces involved that we'll get to in a little bit. But first, make sure you like the video, subscribe, follow us on Instagram at DebateMates, and help us with the algorithm. Keep subscribing, keep liking, and recommending the videos to your friends. And without further ado, Mr. Mercier, from the 76ers side of things, how you feeling today?
Well, first, I'm a subscriber to DebateMates, so I highly recommend that you do the same.
Nice.
Not great. Not great about it. On the plus, we got something for Ben Simmons. On the negative, we gave up two pretty valuable pieces in Seth Curry and Andre Drummond, and I'm not a big Harden guy. Is he a super talented basketball player? Yes. Could he win an and-one tournament on his own? I think so. But in the game of NBA basketball, I think he's a culture killer, man. I think he's the type of guy that most players who have sizable egos don't really want to play with, because when are you going to get the ball? And I know he gets a lot of assists, which makes it seem like he's a Chris Paul-like distributor, but that's not his game. He's a ball-dominant dude, and I don't know how that's going to fit with another ball-dominant ego in Joel Embiid. Now, that being said, clearly Ben Simmons and Embiid, something happened there. It didn't work. But I think somebody with a mindset and game structure like Simmons would work better with Joel Embiid than James Harden. Now, what Harden brings to the table is the ability to score from anywhere on the court. And that's something we did not have with Ben Simmons. So that's a huge difference. But we have scorers already. Maxey can get to the bucket. He can score from outside. He's got a lot. And he's a guy I'd like to see develop. Frankly, I think this is going to stunt his development. Guys like Shake Milton are going to get less time. But we have Harris, we've got Embiid, and we've got Harden. They're three sort of like ISO scoring type of players. That makes it tricky for a defense, but where's the chemistry going to come from? That's my concern. Had we received anything else besides 742-year-old Paul Millsap, maybe this trade balances out, but we didn't. We gave up a very, very talented Seth Curry. He's not Steph Curry, but I'll take Steph Curry Jr. or Steph Curry Light, right? Yeah. I mean, he can score from anywhere on the court. He's a solid defender, solid backup point guard, shooting guard. He can play multiple spots on the floor. It's kind of I feel like it was a big loss. He was given a lot for the Sixers this year, and so that's a great get for the Nets and a pretty significant loss, I think, for the 76ers. And while Drummond wasn't doing a ton for the Sixers, when Embiid can't play, that's a fantastic backup to be able to put in there, right? It's a fantastic guy to slot into your starting lineup. Or if Embiid does get hurt, we haven't seen that before, though, have we?
It doesn't happen very often.
Matt? No.
Modern Iron Man.
Seasons or anything. Yeah, he didn't miss his first 2 years in the NBA. So, that's a concern. Who steps up if Embiid's out? I mean, that obviously if Embiid goes down, your chances of winning a championship go down with some sort of exponential fashion. But having Drummond there for backup minutes and to fill in on those nights when Embiid just needs a break is pretty helpful. And I think that's a huge get. Despite his terrible performance last night in last night's Nets game, It's a big win for the Nets because they don't really have that presence down there, and they've had injuries on their front court this year. So overall rating of this trade for the Sixers, C for me. I mean, you got one of the elite players in the NBA, but he's my least favorite elite player in the NBA for reasons previously stated. I don't think he's good for team chemistry, and I think he's too ball dominant to fit in on that squad. As for the Nets, that's an A trade, maybe A plus. The winner of the trade, I'm going to go with Ben Simmons.
Yeah,
because now he's going to play basketball finally. Clearly wasn't going to happen in Philadelphia. Now he gets to be there with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and LaMarcus Aldridge, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, Blake Griffin. I mean, maybe it was the 2014 All-Star team, but I mean, this is an All-Star lineup that's put together. But Ben Simmons getting to be a part of that is probably going to give him his best chance to win a championship this year, and in future years if they keep that squad together. But yeah, the Nets kind of fleeced us on that. Let's not forget next year, or this year rather, first round pick, which won't be particularly high, hopefully. And then in 2027, it's a strange throw in. 5 years from now, they're going to get our first round pick. So, if the Sixers aren't very good in 5 years, that could be a nice pick.
Maybe I'll turn it around and it'll be me. That'll be my draft class in theory.
That will be your draft class. This could be Matt Swanenberg getting picked up by the Nets using the 76ers first round pick in 2027.
It all works out one way or another. They have me in mind, I think. They've been watching the videos. They want me on the squad.
I saw their head of scouting talking about you the other day on ESPN.
He's not the only one. I agree with you that the Brooklyn Nets get an A or A plus on this trade. Theoretically, the East runs through Brooklyn, but realistically, the East still runs through Milwaukee, I have to say. The only bad thing with Brooklyn is I keep finding myself, whenever I talk about Brooklyn and their chances, is I always start off the sentence with when. Well, when Kevin Durant comes back, and when we get Joe Harris back, and when it's playoff time and we're deciding we're going to ramp it up now. It's so many whens, and eventually they're just going to run out of time, it feels like. And even now, when is Ben Simmons going to come back? Is he on the same timetable as Kevin Durant with his knee injury? Is he going to be before KD, after KD? Now KD might not come back till early March. So Brooklyn is just kind of all over the place as far as who's going to be playing and when they're going to be playing. And then obviously the Kyrie situation has gone on this entire year and looks to not be stopping anytime soon. So I still am a little concerned with Brooklyn, but in theory, with all of the pieces together, this is the best team in the NBA, I think. Because when Brooklyn was at their best at the beginning of the season, when they were number one in the East, they had a top 5 defense in the league. And then that kind of left them. They went on the losing streak. KD got injured, blah, 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 and now they're the 8th seed. But when they were the best, they had the best defense, or one of the best defenses, and Ben Simmons brings that. And most importantly, on the defensive end, Ben Simmons and Andre Drummond are the 2 best players Brooklyn has ever had to guard Giannis. And if you're any team in the Eastern Conference, it's like when you would gear up to just try to beat LeBron, you just got to gear up to try to beat Giannis. And you have the best Giannis stopper in the league, I would say, in Ben Simmons, theoretically at least. He and Anthony Davis are only 2, like, body type wise and quickness wise, that I think have a chance with Giannis. So that's very helpful because you definitely don't want KD.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, definitely don't want KD guarding Giannis like he had to do sometimes in the playoffs last year. It gives him more time and energy to focus in on offense. Then Kyrie's going to be Kyrie. Theoretically, you get Seth Curry, Joe Harris, and Patty Mills all on the court at the same time. The spacing will be deadly.
Yeah, that's hard to defend.
And
you need to double Durant and Kyrie.
Yeah.
I mean, they're ISO masters. You can't stop them one-on-one. There's very few people who's going to match up with those 2 guys.
I mean,
and Simmons on the court to distribute to them. I mean, that's a deadly combo that they've put together.
And Ben Simmons is probably the best defender for Kevin Durant in theory. So, and you got him on Kevin Durant's team now. I think Ben Simmons became really underrated.
Who's
over the last few months because he wasn't playing. I think we forgot that he's probably the most talented defender in the league. He's 6'10", quick, can run in transition. He doesn't like to shoot, but I think we over-exaggerate that just because of the one video from the playoffs where he passed up the dunk. And he's had some rough playoff performances before that. But this is not a bad player. This is like I think 2-time All-NBA, 3-time All-Star, Defensive Player of the Year candidate each of the last couple of years. He's still a top 25 player when healthy, I think.
Ben Simmons is a phenomenal basketball player. Don't let anyone fool you. Is he a great shooter? No. That's his weakness. There's a weakness in Ben Simmons' game. It's a shooting. He's just not a confident shooter. I don't know that he's not capable of developing a jump shot, but he really hasn't shown that up to this point, and I think it's a confidence thing for him. But every single other aspect of the game, he excels in.
Right.
So ball handling, ball distribution, spacing, setting up the floor, running the point guard position as a 6 foot, almost 7 foot guy, right, who can move like just as well as a Giannis or a LeBron James at that size. An incredible passer, great rebounder from a point guard position. He brings everything to the table. And like you mentioned, all NBA defensive caliber player, right? I mean, this is like a phenomenal defender who can guard just about anybody on the court. He mixes so well with a team that has a Durant and a Kyrie Irving, who are really score first kind of guys. I mean, they're elite scorers. So now what Ben Simmons does is he gives you the ability to help space the floor and help distribute and run the offense, while Durant and Kyrie are going to get a lot of easy shots, I think. It's going to be tough to beat them. You're right. He's always been underrated, and this year, by sitting out, he's become undervalued, which is why the Nets were able to fleece the Sixers in this trade. I mean, theoretically, Simmons and another first-round pick is probably enough to get you James Harden. Harden's numbers are hyperinflated always, but what has Harden done besides produce giant numbers? As what is his usage rate? Like a 70% usage rate player or something? I mean, that's so.
And I think
that's great.
Simmons is on a roster where his weaknesses are going to be hidden. This is, I think, going to be a career renaissance for him because he can just be Draymond Green. And that's all he needs to do with Brooklyn Nets.
It's exactly right.
If he doesn't want to shoot, a three, he can't shoot a three. Kyrie can, KD can, Patty Mills can, Joe Harris definitely
Steph Curry can.
Seth Curry is the 5th highest three-point percentage shooter in NBA history, so he can knock him down. Get it to LaMarcus Aldridge for an elbow jump shot too. I mean, Brooklyn got Cam Thomas off the bench, not afraid to shoot. They're just going to be so deep, and they got so many shooters, a wealth of shooters. This is like a Golden State type of lineup, and I think Ben Simmons is perfect to play a Draymond Green type of role. That's always been the type of player he's been, except he's more athletically gifted than Draymond Green. So I still think he has a higher ceiling than him, and currently might even be better depending on what type of shape he's in. And you put a Draymond Green type player on any team, much less a team that already has 5 of the best shooters in the NBA on it, and you're going to see them be pretty scary.
Yeah, if they can get healthy, get everybody together, and I tell you what'll be huge. I mean, they don't need Kyrie every single game to win those series in playoffs, but not having him for home games is a problem. And in a theoretical development, if KD for whatever reason isn't 100% healthy during the playoffs, and Brooklyn matches up with the New York Knicks, why would that be a problem? Because Kyrie can't play in the city of New York right now.
It's a good thing New York stinks.
Yeah, thankfully they're not that good. I think in our beginning of the year predictions, I had them like 4th or something in the East. That's not probably likely to pan out. I don't know what happened. They started pretty strong. They just decided to stop playing basketball. But anyways, the Kyrie situation is one worth monitoring. Now, with the way that COVID keeps fluctuating and policies keep changing left and right, it's possible by the time the playoffs roll around that prohibition for him is gone. He may be allowed to play in home games by April, May timeframe. So we have to kind of see how that plays out. Losing Harden does make that more impactful because Harden is the kind of guy who can score from anywhere on the court. And so losing an Irving it's gonna have an impact. But as you've noted, they got a plethora of great shooters that they can still space the floor with, and Simmons is a great distributor and offensive game plan manager. So really, as long as they got Durant, I'm with you. I think as long as Durant's healthy, they're still a front runner to get to the championship.
And another thing
I
I
think
think
it's the
is worth
finals.
noting, even though not involved in this trade directly, is I hope Steve Nash at this point has realized that Bruce Brown is someone that needs to be on the court 20 plus minutes a game. I
Amen.
think the perfect ideal starting lineup for Brooklyn is you get Kyrie, Bruce Brown, Joe Harris, Kate. Wait, I was about to name 6 players, so that would be not a starting 5. But Kyrie, KD, Ben Simmons, Joe Harris, and Bruce Brown. I think you go small with this lineup and let Ben Simmons just play free safety and wreak havoc like Draymond would do in the Golden
Yeah,
State Death lineup times, and let Bruce Brown guard the other team's best perimeter scorer, and then let KD, Kyrie, and Joe Harris just go insane, go nuclear on offense like they all have the ability to do. And then if Joe Harris is injured, you swap in a Patty Mills or a Seth Curry. They have a lot of guys in that three-point shooting role that are interchangeable. And then you can pull out Andre Drummond for a break in case of emergency situations. You still got Nick Claxton there on the bench, who I've never been a fan of, still am not a fan of. And I'm very glad that we're not going to have to see him play very much anymore because he has terrible hands and is not very good at finishing. Um, he's like built like Kevin Durant, but has none of the perimeter skills. So imagine Kevin Durant, that body with no perimeter skills.
only
That's Nick
inside scoring
Claxton.
ability. Yeah, that's a fair
So
comparison, I think.
Brooklyn, their defense is going to improve so much. The shooting is going to improve because they'll have so much more spacing. And then Andre Drummond, he'll give you like 15 rebounds on a bad night. And a lot of GMs have said they don't really think Andre Drummond has much of an impact. They say he's the type of guy he'll have 20 and 20 and have zero impact on the game. But even 10 rebounds or 5 extra rebounds for Brooklyn is going to be worth it because we get none.
And putting that size down low. I mean, so I like your idea with a generalized starting lineup, but you also have to sort of play matchups. So when the Nets play the Sixers, for instance, that lineup's going to have a hard time doing anything against Joel Embiid.
Right.
So that might be a good time to swat either a Bruce Brown or a Joe Harris out of that starting lineup and insert an Andre Drummond, who has the size and stature to kind of match up with Embiid. He's not going to stop Joel Embiid, but Andre Drummond's a pretty good defender. You know, I mean, that's been a four stocks a game kind of player for a long time, steals and blocks, right? And he's getting them all. And like you said, double guy in terms of points and rebounds. He's a force down low. He's a force. You know, he may not be a top 5 center, but he's no worse than a top 10 center probably, given a starting role. And so I think that's a fantastic pickup. I think the Nets have options. I think they can match up. They can play a matchup with any team that they want, and they can rotate those guys, like you said. There's 8 or 9 guys on that team that could enter the starting lineup on a given night, and it would be just fine.
Hopefully one of them is not James Johnson because he's not very good, but he gets a lot of minutes for some reason. He gets a lot of random minutes where he'll like not play, and then Steve Nash will just insert him.
You know
into
what he is?
the
He's Dennis Rodman for the Nets. Here's the thing with Dennis. Here's what Dennis Rodman was, right? This is a little before your time. I'm sure you've watched footage. You're a well-educated basketball fan, and you're an expert. We give you expert status. But Dennis Rodman was just grit. He was just 100% grit. He was dirty. He was nasty. He'd get down. He would elbow you. Really, all he did, I mean, he played tough defense, but he played tough defense. It's not like you want him guarding your best player. So had he not been on the Bulls, you wouldn't have put him up against Michael Jordan. He would have been smoked. But really what he did was he grabbed rebounds. He was there and he grabbed rebounds. That was Dennis Rodman's role. Play really tight, hard-nosed defense. Be that sort of that you need that guy, that Draymond Green. He was their Draymond Green with less overall skills. Because Draymond can shoot, Draymond can pass, Draymond's got a good skill set. But Draymond's also like the rough and tough dude for the Warriors, right? I mean, he's the guy that's going to kick you down low to make you think twice about entering his defensive zone.
Right.
So that was Dennis Rodman. And I think that's what we have with James Johnson. He's in that mold. He's a guy you can bring in for 12 to 15 minutes to play some just nasty basketball in there and kind of frustrate the other team. There's a lot to be said for guys like that. They frustrate you. They get you off your game. So having someone like that you can just throw in there and have them like go wild. Matt Barnes was kind of like that too.
Yeah.
You know, they just frustrate the other team. They get under their skin. They cause problems. They disrupt a lot of their offense. So James Johnson is super skilled. No, he is a martial arts master
He
or
is.
an
He's
MMA
an
master,
MMA fighter.
MMA fighter. So there you go, right? Get him in there and just have him do some takedowns.
Now, moving back over to the Philadelphia side of things, congratulations on Paul Millsap. You're going to hate him. He's not very good anymore. And I have two potential starting lineups I wanted to throw at you, being the 76ers fan. Tell me which one you would rather see the 76ers go with. Or if you have another one you want to throw out there, let me hear it. So would you prefer Harden-Maxey backcourt with Danny Green at the 3, Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid? Or do you like the idea of a Harden-Matisse Thybulle backcourt, Danny Green, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid? Or go crazy and take Danny Green out completely and put Thybulle and Maxey in it? I don't think you can do that, though, because you can't really put Danny Green out there alone in the bench squad. So which of those lineups do you prefer or hope to see the Sixers go with?
My thinking here is that you want Maxey and Harden in separate starting roles. I mean, they might close games together, depending on how much scoring you need. It depends on the flow of the game, I think, in that situation. Green is a great defender. Not as good as he used to be, but he's still a top-end defender, and Tebow is another one. So my thinking is this. If you have Harden and Harris and Embiid on the floor, you have one heck of a scoring trio. I mean, that's a nice big 3 for scoring. It makes sense to me then to have Green and Tebow in that lineup to bring some defensive presence because none of those 3 guys are particularly good defenders. I mean, Embiid does okay down low, but he's kind of a LeBron like in his game flow. I mean, he's putting his energies on the offensive end. Harris is meh, I think, as a defender. You know, you're not giving him any awards. And Harden, we know, doesn't play defense. So having a Green and a Tebow on the court to sort of help maybe slow down the opposing team's top 2 scorers seems like a really good idea with that lineup. Then that gives you Maxey off the bench for some scoring punch and to run the offense in place of James Harden. Part of me likes the idea of maybe getting Korkmaz, but he's so inconsistent. Like, the guy's got potential and skills and he can shoot, and that's nice to have some floor spacing. But Danny Green offers you the floor spacing as well in the starting lineup as a 3-and-D guy. So I think I like your first lineup, or your second lineup rather. I think getting Maxey as your 6th man is probably the way to go here for the most efficient use of that roster, because that roster doesn't go very deep anymore.
Right. Yeah, I agree
They took 2 key components.
Just brings a defensive intensity, and then let Maxey go crazy off the bench like a Tyler Hero type of role for the Heat, where he can just kind of orchestrate the offense. Another winner of this, I think, was Daryl Morey, the Sixers general manager, because he let himself get clowned for like 6 months because he said that he would wait as long as he needed to wait. He did not care how uncomfortable he made anybody on the 76ers. He was just going to wait it out and not let Ben Simmons get traded for – people wanted him to trade Ben Simmons for C.J. McCollum. We were angry when he didn't trade him for C.J. McCollum, and he got James Harden instead. That is such a big upgrade, and people hated him because they thought, oh, you're asking for way too much. No one's going to give you Damian Lillard. No one's going to give you Harden. Just do a deal. Nobody's happy. You're wasting a great year of Embiid. But he waited. He played it correctly. And he ended up looking kind of like a genius, because I disagree that the Sixers are only like a C in this instance. I think they're an A as well. I think this is a win-win. Basically a your problem for my problem, but we both get better anyways. Because
True. I did see a report where Harden was – I think it's fake news, but where Harden was already sort of expressing disgruntlement, though. But then I went back and looked for that. I think I saw that on Twitter. So it's probably a joke post. I couldn't find any source for that.
But
So
Embiid has never played with a player as good as James Harden in his entire career. And this is Embiid's best season of his career.
this is
I
true.
think they're going to be scary. Probably, I think right now, you got the Bucks in their own tier in the Eastern Conference just because they have the roster continuity and they're just really good, even though they lost to the Sixers last night. Then in the second tier, I think you got a bunch of teams in there together. The Heat, not the Bucks, the Heat, the Sixers, and the Nets. In theory, both of those two teams I mentioned last, the Sixers and the Nets, are going to be in that tier one, or maybe even overtake Milwaukee and be in a tier one all by themselves. Because these are the two most talented teams in the NBA, I would say, right now. The Nets have the best trio in the NBA, and maybe you'd give the edge to Chris Paul and Devin Booker just because of their chemistry together. But Embiid and Harden has got to be the best 1-2 punch in the NBA, talent-wise, right? I mean, with LeBron and AD not
LeBron and
consistently
AD
playing
would be the other
together.
one. Yeah.
So you're all of a sudden maybe making two miniature super teams, or at least super duos and super trios. So I think these are the two best teams in the East if everything goes to plan. So I think this is an A and an A for both squads.
That's a fair point. Like I mentioned, Harden is a phenomenal on the court player. I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from him. I think what he lacks in defense, the Sixers have, as we talked about their starting lineup opportunities, they have enough really, really good defenders to make up for his lack of defense. But there's just something about James Harden that, I mean, if he was as good as he's touted, you would think he would have a ring by now. Now, there's lots of things that go into play there, right? But I think his weakness is he's too ball dominant. And at some point, that becomes a hindrance. You got to be willing to trust people around you and let them do some of the work. And in some of his situations, that didn't exist. There were some Houston teams he played for where who was he going to give the ball to?
Right.
You know, I mean, Eric Gordon or something, right? It was just, there wasn't a lot to work with. So it made sense for him just to take every shot or drive the lane every time and try to draw a foul. So, you know, where he tends to fall off, he's phenomenal regular season guy. And what do we see in the playoffs with James Harden, Matt?
Crash and burn a little bit. Gets a little tired.
Yeah, and they don't
Well, and what
call
do we
as
see from
much.
Embiid in the postseason? He's kind of known for getting a little fatigued himself.
Yeah, I think that's more of a maybe he needs a new diet plan or workout regimen, something. I think he's a little lazy on the fitness front sometimes. Although he looks pretty good this year.
Yeah, he does. And he's
He
been
looks,
healthy.
yeah, I think he maybe puts some more work in that front over the offseason. And so far, knock on wood, it's been paying some dividends. Like you said, he's having his best season by far. Yeah, Harden's game is really predicated, has been at least in the past, on getting to the foul line. I mean, a lot of his scoring comes from the stripe. So he gets those calls in the regular season. And then in the playoffs, the refs tend to be a little more let them play. So the ticky-tacky stuff that he would get in the paint doesn't get called. And so it turns into a turnover or a terrible shot attempt in an attempt to draw a foul. Those types of plays, when he's not getting to the line, when he's getting to the line 12 times instead of 22, that's a huge difference in the outcomes for James Harden. So that's the part of his game that I've never really particularly respected personally because it has a very obvious flaw when it needs to count most.
Right.
Works great in the regular season. That's why he can average 32 points and 12 assists. But in the postseason, it's a little bit different ballgame. And they don't, when the refs ain't calling all those ticky-tacky fouls, yikes.
This is the one only real drawback I have in already anointing the Sixers as one of my favorites is Harden, although we kind of know him for his ISO play, I think he's at his best in the pick and roll. His best seasons of his career was when he had a vertical threat in Clint Capella. Because I remember watching those series against Golden State, and it was if he got that pick and roll, he was getting a floater because they were overcommitting to Capella. He was getting fouled because he did his little thing where he puts his arms out and dares you to slap down, which worked every time. or he was lobbing it to Capella because they overplayed him. He didn't have that in Brooklyn. Still was amazing for the most part. Had a month there, like last February, I believe it was, where he threw himself into the NBA MVP conversation with KD injured. So he still can put up crazy stats without that vertical threat. But I think at his best, he's a pick and roll player. He plays best in the pick and roll. Embiid is not really a great lob threat and does not really play in the pick and roll. He doesn't really not really a big post up guy. He kind of gets it off the dribble a little bit more now. You saw a lot last night. He put a great example, step back mid-range jumpers, taking the ball off the rim and bringing it down the court, or throwing it to Maxey and relocating at the free throw line. That's kind of more his style of play now. And Embiid, Harden has never played with a big guy who's functioned in that way. He's always played with a more traditional big guy, or at least had the most success in his career with the traditional big guy. All that being said, they're both smart players. They're both incredibly talented players. So I think it works itself out. And one thing I will say for you, Mr. Mercier, it's going to be rough watching Sixers games because if you got a game at 7, you're not going to bed until about midnight because Embiid and Harden shoot like 20 free throws apiece. That's going to be a parade to the foul line with these two on the court together. And
the final score will be 92 to in a 5-hour game. The final score will be 92 to 87.
Well, and you can't. Let's say it's halftime. You're tired. Sixers are up 25 points. At first, you just had Doc Rivers, which was bad enough, blowing leads. But now you got James Harden too. And unless you're up 50 or 60 points, you're going to need to watch that game. You're going to need to stare at that TV screen because those leads evaporate when you got those two guys on the same court together.
Very true. Yeah, I mean, losing Simmons' defense is – I mean, that's a team that was predicated on hard defense. I mean, they were top 3, top 4 team in defense the last few years. A lot of that's Ben Simmons. Danny Green's addition helped. Tybalt was definitely helpful with that. I mean, he's a phenomenal defender himself. So, you know, that's where I think the Sixers are going to – I think people – are going to flock to this trade and go, man, James Harden and Joel Embiid, that's great. Wow, what a dynamic duo. And it is. But it's still a team game. I mean, there are other elements and there are weaknesses to Harden's game. He's not Kevin Durant. I mean, Kevin Durant doesn't really have a weakness outside of the injuries if he can stay healthy, right? But I mean, his on the court performance, he's a great defender. Kevin Durant doesn't get enough credit for his defense. He can score from anywhere. He can pass. He can dribble. I mean, what can't Kevin Durant do? He can do everything.
And you can play into any system, or he can be a system.
Exactly right. And he can score in any fashion, and he can play any style. So Harden really has been – you're right. He's a good pick-and-roll guy with a traditional big. Will Embiid accept that role and start working in that regard with him? We'll see. Time will tell. That'll make a big difference. Having a guy like Tobias Harris there to help take some of the scoring load off too helps. I mean, he's Harden. Not that the Nets were probably his best overall situation from a teammate perspective. But that being said, Kyrie's another one of those ego play. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's hard. I have a feeling that Harden and Kyrie wasn't working too well, and that's why this trade was made. I think Simmons can get along with the Kyrie, and Simmons can get along with the Durant because he'll defer to them. Harden doesn't defer. So that's where he and Embiid are going to have to not lock horns. Who's getting the last shot of the game? Who's getting the ball at the end? You know?
Right, yeah.
Not to overinflate that scenario, but that's like a microcosmic issue of the potential problems I see with adding James Harden.
Yeah.
We knew Ben Simmons wasn't going to take that last shot. That's for sure.
With both new teams, there are a lot of pros, and most of the cons are just off-the-court issues. Talent-wise, both of these teams are in a great position. It's just a matter of how it goes off the court, really.
I agree. One team to throw in the mix. You didn't mention them. This is why I'm throwing them in there, because I've been kind of blown away by how good they've been. The Chicago Bulls.
DeMar DeRozan just broke a Wilt Chamberlain record.
Which one? What was that? Scoring 40 points a game for like a month straight or something?
35+ points on 50+% shooting from the field. I think he's either at 6 or 7 straight games of that. break, Wilt Chamberlain's stat. It's a kind of hand-picked ESPN type stat, but anytime you break any record held by Wilt Chamberlain,
Exactly.
you're in rarefied air right there.
You absolutely are. And that's a guy that's underrated has been forever. DeMar DeRozan really doesn't have a ton of weakness, not a great three-point shooter. And so he's always sort of been dogged because he's not a three guy. And it's like, that's the thing in the NBA. Shoot a three. Everyone shoots a three. Three is free ball. I mean, the Splash Bros. So he didn't fit that mold, but man, the guy can score from just about anywhere else on the court with pretty great efficiency and always has. But yeah, that team they've put together, man, with Vooch and DeRozan and Levine, who's pretty doggone good basketball player.
Yeah.
Probably underrated. Even a guy like a Kobe White coming in off the bench, and once Ball gets healthy again.
And
And I'm not a big Lonzo Ball fan, but he was playing really good ball at the beginning of the year.
I think DeRozan has solidified himself right now as a top 10 player in the NBA. I think right now
I wouldn't argue against that. Yeah, I wouldn't argue against that.
And he's going to have a pretty good MVP case come end of the season too. He already does.
Yeah, that team is a vastly different team this year. Now they got Vooch too, and that trade happened right at the deadline last year, right? I mean, they got
but a lot of COVID protocol kept them from playing together.
Yeah, so that we didn't really get to see his impact last year. But this year with Vooch and DeRozan, man. And even guys like, Javonte Green and Ayo Dosunmu.
Ayo Dosunmu out of Illinois.
Man, those guys have added a pretty big impact. Like, that's a team that you got to be careful with. They're not going to be an easy out in the playoffs for anybody in the East. So,
right.
And as they gel, that's a team that seems like they gelled pretty quickly. So as the year goes on, pardon, my cat's over here, like, having a fit. I don't know if you hear that. As they gel towards the playoffs, I'd be wondering about them. I'd be worried if I were any of the top 3 or 4 tier teams that we were talking about.
The end of the season in the East and then the playoffs are going to be an absolute bloodbath because another team that's not even at the top of the standings but still has just as much potential as any of the teams we've named so far is the Atlanta Hawks. They're one of the few teams to take down a healthy Suns this year. Not many teams have been able to do that. The Suns are 18-1 in their last 19 games, started the season 1-3, and now I believe are 44-10 or 43-10. So there aren't a lot of teams that have taken down the Suns when completely healthy. One of them is the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta is really good. And Boston is incredible right now. Won 9 out of their last 10. Would be on a 10-game winning streak if Marcus Smart didn't roll his ankle.
Yeah, getting rid of Dennis Schrader seems to have been – well, they've been on a winning streak since prior to that. But benching Dennis Schrader for the most part and then sending him away seems to have been the cure for their blues. The Celtics have been on a roll lately. And that's,
Not to mention the Cavs if we're going to talk about great teams in the East. The 4 seed right now.
Incredible, right? Who predicted that?
I definitely.
Anyone out there? Raise your hands.
I think the tape would show that neither of us had them in the playoffs.
Yeah, that would definitely show that I didn't even talk about the Cavs. They were so far off my playoff list. Not even a consideration. And that's without Colin Sexton.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Great team right now. Darius Garland and I miss Jared Allen. He'd be nice to have.
Yeah, I never understood why the Nets got rid of him in the first place, but that down low presence that him and Mobley are bringing. Kevin Love resurgence.
Oh yeah.
I think you talked about that on your last episode.
I did. Yeah, I got a real fan here.
Yeah, I will tell you, the Kevin Love resurgence is a real thing, guys. Watch out, he's back. He got
Larry Markkinen.
He got that mental health situation worked out. He's feeling right. What's that?
I said there were rumors Larry Markkinen might have to go serve in the Finnish government, but even he's playing well.
Yeah, no, I don't know what's going on in Cleveland. There's something in the water. They've fixed it.
So speaking of,
they've been playing incredible.
I'm gonna screen share real quick because we have the All-Star weekend coming up in Cleveland this weekend.
All right.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Run through a couple of these events, and I want to see what your predictions are. Let me figure out how to work Zoom real quick. Here we are. So, Here we got the slam dunk contest featuring Cole Anthony, Juan Toscano Anderson, Jalen Green, and Obi Toppin. Who you taking?
So honestly, have no clue with this, but I did they have these free like NBA.com like guess who's going to win these things. I picked Jalen Green. I don't know why. Pure athleticism, I think, sometimes wins these dunk competitions, but I've never seen Obi Toppin dunk. I have no idea. Juan Toscano Anderson doesn't impress me as the guy who's like a high flyer from what I've seen, but I could be totally wrong. And Cole Anthony, I mean, maybe he Spud Webb's this thing, but I feel like Jalen Green is that dude this year. He's going to
I
bring
take
out
Jalen Green too, I think. Juan Toscano Anderson was the only one. I looked at that and I watch a lot of basketball, but I don't really feel like I've ever seen him throw down a thunderous dunk or anything. Cole
No, me
Anthony,
neither.
Obi Toppin, Jalen Green, yes, but Anderson? No, not really.
I was surprised to see him in the dunk competition.
So I think this is more our forte. We're not really athletic dunkers. I don't even know if you're a good 3-point shooter, but you got to be better at that than you are dunking.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think Jalen Green's the pick there. That's the smart money, as they would say. 3-point shootout is going to be tricky.
I think Zach LaVine takes it home. He would become the only player to win the 3-point shootout and the dunk contest, so he's got more of a reason to win it than any of these other guys do. So I'm going Zach LaVine.
Fair choice. Motivation is important there. I want to say Cat. I just to see a center win this thing would be a trip. I mean, it's the first big guy I've seen since Dirk Nowitzki in the 3-point shootout. But man, that's really tough. Yeah, it's not like the days. There were days where like the Del Currys of the world, right, were like automatic picks to make it to the finals of the 3-point shootout. They were just specialists, Steve Kerrs and John Paxson's or whatever. You just knew those guys were gonna. That's all they did. I feel like a sleeper pick here is Patty Mills.
Yeah.
I feel like Patty Mills, man. That's totally just a gut call. I feel like Patty Mills might come away with this.
The Mountain Dew ball, though. That's a big one.
What's that?
I don't know if he's got the range to knock down the old Mountain Dew ball they added now, the deep shot. That's something we've seen LaVine knock down, but Patty Mills is more toe on the line type of guy, or right behind the line, I should say.
Good point. How many points does that get them?
It's 3 points twice, so 6 points in total if you make them both.
Oh, you know who's an expert at that?
Mr. Trae Young.
Mr. Trae Young can shoot from half court pretty easily. See, my initial thinking was Trae Young, but for some reason, I feel like this is going to be like all these big names, right? These former All-Stars or current All-Stars. There's just Patty Mills kind of squeaked in there. I mean, Luke Kennard too, but man, I know Bane has not been an All-Star yet, but I feel like he's trending towards that in the next couple of years. But you got Patty Mills just kind of hanging out in there, who's always been a pretty efficient 3-point shooter. I don't know. I'm torn between Mills and Young. I like your call with LaVine, though. He's got more motivation than anybody else, with that argument. So
either way, I think we're going to see a good contest this year. We got a lot of gifted shooters in the mix.
Yeah, that 3-point shootout looks way more exciting to me than a dunk competition.
It's always more entertaining than the dunk contest, though.
Agreed. I don't know. There were these years where like Dwight Howard and some other high-flying guys with their super.
If we just got Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine every year, that'd be good.
Agreed. But Zach LaVine's taking his talents to the 3-point competition, so
he's just become an all-around player now.
He has. He really has. That guy's a baller, man.
So I think we can call it there. We discussed this Harden and Simmons trade into pretty good detail, so I hope you guys enjoyed and feel a little bit more informed now than you did before. Hopefully you got a different point of view hearing it from us for the 100th time. But I had a great time talking about it. It was just good to be back on the debate mates talking about some big news, which we haven't gotten in a while. So a fun video, great time. I hope you guys all enjoyed.
Yeah, I had a blast. Thank you, Matt, for having me.
And Mr. Mercier, we got to get you back playoff time because the Sixers are definitely going to be in there.
Deal. Name the time, name the place. I'll be there.
All right, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time on the Debate Mates.